Okay, this is a picture I took at one of the Panther games. Took it with the Canon 1D Mark IV with a 2.8 excuse me, 24 millimeter lens, fixed, 2.8 f-stop, shot at 6400 ISO, 1/800th of a second, wide open at 2.8. Straight out of the camera, this looks a little dull to me. And what I'm talking about processing is how I would process if I was going to put it on the web. For the newspaper, I would use a different process, but anyway, this is what I would do. The way it is now, it looks a little dull to me. The first thing I would do is sharpen it, and I just go to Filter, Sharpen, Unsharp Mask, and then I would put the little square somewhere where I want to use as a reference for how much it's sharpening, which you can use people's faces. You can use whatever you want. You can use letters. It's up to you. Um, I'm not sure what this slider defaults at, but like if you move it all the way to the left, you can see right here that it's pretty fuzzy. If you move it all the way to the right to 500%, you can see that it's overly sharpened and very, very grainy. So what I do is I start to where it's blurry, and I just move it over a little at a time. To where it starts to look too grainy for me, I'll stop. And that's going to be your preference, how sharp you want it. 100 is not bad for this one, I think. I mean, so I'll go ahead and press OK. Now I'm done sharpening. Now I want to adjust the saturation and levels. So what I'll do is I'll go down to the layer mask option down here. It's the little black and white bubble. I'm going to do saturation first, hue saturation. So then I've got that panel open, and if you go all the way to the left, it turns it black and white, it takes all the color. If you go all the way to the right, it's 100% saturated, which is kind of cool looking, but ridiculous anyway. Not what I would put on there. Usually on mine, it's going to be different with everyone's cameras, depends on how yours is set up. I know on the Canon cameras, you can actually set it to have some saturation right out of the camera with the JPEG options. I don't think mine is set for that, but anyway, so I usually go with skin tones. I don't want them to look orange, so obviously at 38 they're orange. Come back, I usually end up somewhere around 17 to 20, just so it doesn't look, so it gives it a little pop, but it doesn't look unnatural. Obviously, if you're doing something different than sports like portraits or whatever, you might have a different process that you want to do or different saturation levels. So I'm done with that. Press OK. Come down to the same spot at the bottom right again. Go to Levels. And this is the white slider. Controls how much white there is. This is the black slider. Controls how much black there is. And then the middle slider is the midtones. So you can make it lighter or darker. So what I do on this is it's just another way to control the contrast, really. But the way what I like about it is if you press the Alt key when you slide these, you can see where it shows you in the picture where you're starting to lose detail. So I'm going to hold the Alt key and move the white slider. Everything that you see in white, there's no detail. Even at the far right, those are the lights. They didn't have detail to start with, and it doesn't really matter in this picture. So I'll go left. What I look for on this sports picture is I want their jerseys to start losing just a little bit of detail in the highlights. So I might go back to about like that. If you go too much like this, it's just going to look too blown out. So I'm going to go back to where it's starting to lose a little in the jerseys, which is right about there. And my goal is to make it look to where their faces are a little lighter, but I don't want a bunch of detail blown out. But a little bit of detail blown out is okay with me. Now on the blacks, I'll come over. I usually don't go real far. That's 30. I usually go till there. And when you see black on the screen like this, when you hold the Alt key, that's where there's no detail at all in the shadows. Everything that's black on there, there's not detail. I usually end up around where it just starts to get some like this, just a little bit, maybe 10, 11. And what it does is it gives it some pop. If you press preview right here, you can see what it looked like before and after. See, this is before I processed the levels. That's after I processed the levels. I just think it has a little more pop. So then I'm done with that. That's really all I would do to this picture. I mean, you can crop it or whatever you want. You can flatten it by going layer and flatten at the bottom, or you can just do Control Shift E and it's flattened, and then you can save it. So that's my process.